vaccines, having earlier this week dismissed all 17 former members of the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has named 8 replacements. Some of the names will raise eyebrows. One, Dr. Robert Malone, has been repeatedly accused by fact-checkers of making misleading claims about the safety and effectiveness of COVID vaccines. Other appointees have aired similar skepticism.
ABC's Stephen Portnoy. Los Angeles police preparing for another night of protests against immigration raids. LA's mayor says a curfew remains in place. The state is suing the Trump administration to stop the deployment of federal troops. Demonstrations also spreading to other cities. Texas Governor Greg Abbott mobilizing the state's National Guard as a preemptive measure. And stocks today ending down over tariffs. Concerns over impact on the economy. This is ABC News. Music fans are mourning the death of Brian Wilson, the founding member of the Beach Boys.
He's considered one of the most influential pop musicians of the 20th century, architect of the California sound. But Brian Wilson started simple, singing with his brothers in their living room, then forming the Beach Boys in 1961. The band's popularity put a strain on Wilson, suffering a nervous breakdown in 1964, the start of a lifelong struggle with mental health issues and substance abuse. Out of those battles came the release of Pet Sounds, his crowning achievement and widely regarded as a masterpiece. Wilson was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the Beach Boys in 1988. Matt Wolf, ABC News.
Brian Wilson was 82. A Costco shopper is suing the company, claiming she suffered severe injuries after a display cabinet with liquor fell and hit her. The woman is seeking $14 million in damages, saying she suffered a traumatic brain injury. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code EARN to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code EARN for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code EARN for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day. The Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Grosvenor.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives. I'm Todd McKinley in Northeast Tennessee, joined by my co-host, Colonel Chris Wyatt in Central PA, and John Grosvenor, as always, holding down the studio there in Nashua for everybody. We appreciate our listeners. Speaking of the inverted reality, is there anything going on out in the West Coast right now that's a little weird? Is there peaceful protests, or is it, what's going on out there?
Well, it's a mostly peaceful protest, I understand, from Los Angeles ABC reporter, as people heckled her in the background and cars were burned down the street. But it's not just in Los Angeles. This coordinated insurrection is arising in multiple municipalities around the country last night. Fortunately, authorities were prepared in several municipalities across the United States to deal with these reprobates. It's time for arrest, indictment, trial, and execution. I mean, imprisonment or execution if it's appropriate.
Ready? Aim!
Fire.
Stop the execution.
Yeah, we're not going to tolerate this nonsense that Trump tolerated in 2020. It's the end of this nonsense. This day is ended. You clowns are not going to get away with this nonsense, and it's about time.
Absolutely. John, what say you before we bring in our guest if he's ready to rock?
I guess not saying a whole lot. You know, that nutty stuff going on there in LA, it's incredible. It's I'm watching these guys claiming that that was Mexico first, and how dare they try to kick them out of their own country, sort of thing. Right? They're trying to make believe like it's.
I'm sorry, Mexico first. Weren't there Native Americans there before the conquistadors came along? So this is a narrative by La Raza, a racist organization of Hispanic scumbags whose ultimate goal is the reconquista of the old Southwest in California, which they lost in a war. Get over it.
Also,
Absolutely.
I think it was a territory to Mexico. It wasn't actually a state of
James K. Polk, who was the president at the time from Tennessee, kicked their butts. It's ours. Get over it.
And part of we purchased the Gadsden purchase, we bought outright. So
Gadsden purchase. Yeah, we paid them a lot of money. Absolutely.
That's right. Hit the road, Jack.
But John, speaking of crowds and speaking of, riots and so on and so forth and protests and et cetera, you want to introduce our guest and bring him in?
Absolutely. I'm going to bring in Mr. Adam Swart, founder and CEO of Crowds on Demand. Hi, Adam. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Good evening, guys, out in New Hampshire and all across the country. It's a pleasure to be with you. I've heard some great things about what you guys do on this show. New Hampshire is really like a common sense state, so I can't think of a better name for your show than that.
It's often thought of as being a blue state, but we're definitely a red state statewide, blue on a federal level. We're screwed that way.
Well, you guys actually pay attention to how you vote, which I think more people need to do. That's why it has these different reputations, because people actually study. They say, okay, I'll vote for a Democrat if he's sensible. I'll vote for a Republican if he's sensible. And that's what people across the country should do. People shouldn't just be like little sheep and vote for the party, because we don't owe anything to the parties. The parties are corrupt apparatuses that are supposed to channel the people, but they have their own ideas at play. So I don't swear allegiance to any party. So that's kind of why I've always had an affinity for people of New Hampshire, but it's too cold for me. So I love it.
A little bit chilly.
Well, before we begin the interview, Colonel, would you like to go ahead and take the lead real quick?
Sure. Well, let's get started here, Adam. So you started, I think, as a student at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. Lovely campus there. Go Bruins. But you started this business back then. I think you said something along the lines that if a politician says something in front of a crowd of 1,000, it means one thing as opposed to a crowd of 10, which is an argument I've made with social media for a long time. YouTube shadow banned my content for a long time, and then finally broke through several months ago after years of toiling and achieved 100,000 subscribers. And my argument, a lot of my viewers are like, Chris, don't worry about your audience. It doesn't matter. People are really loyal. And I said, well, it's great that people are loyal, but Alexander the Great, if he had 10 loyal soldiers, wouldn't have conquered the world. You want to get your message out there. And the way to get your message out there was a larger crowd. Was that the intent, Adam? Did it have something to do with why you organized this as a way to get more attention on issues?
Right. So the way that I see what we do at Crowds on Demand, it's a catalyst, right? So what we do, you cannot, I think there's a lot of misperception that what we do is make something look bigger than it is, right? So there's this kind of charge of manipulation that I've always kind of disagreed with, because what we do is a catalyst. So let me give you kind of two examples of kind of paid movements, one that ultimately grew and one that didn't. So look at the Tea Party. The Tea Party was backed by a ton of money in 2009, 2010 by the Koch brothers and other kind of wealthy conservatives, right? So it started as kind of people wearing that colonial garb, Fox News, conservative media really amplified it. If there hadn't been money, it would have never gotten that attention to grow, right? So it obviously grew because that message resonated with a lot of people, right? But if they hadn't had money to catalyze it, it wouldn't have necessarily grown. So, but if it hadn't had a good message, then it wouldn't have been kind of magnified the way it did. Conversely, look at Jeb Bush, right? I'm pretty sure, what did he raise? $150, $200 million, something like that in 2016, spent money on basically everything under the sun. What it bought him was name recognition, but it didn't buy him votes because people didn't like him. Everybody knew who he was. They didn't not vote for Jeb because they didn't know who he was. They didn't vote for him because his message didn't resonate. So what we do at Crowds on Demand is we serve as the catalyst. We can get something the attention, the context it deserves. But again, if it's a good cause, it's a cause that resonates, then it's going to grow naturally from there. And if it isn't, then it might fizzle.
Well, it's an interesting comment you make there. I'm curious because this is an apropos time to have you on. What with the fake protests and actual insurrection taking place in Los Angeles, these aren't protests. This is an insurrection, and this happened also in 2020. So it's interesting to have you on here to talk about this, because my question to you related to that is that, how do you guys organize this? I mean, obviously, do you get the word out? Do you have campaigns? And is it focused on things? Because, these things, what people call demonstrations, and I'm not saying what you guys are doing, but what people say are demonstrations, oftentimes aren't demonstrations. They're masquerade as demonstrations. They're lawlessness, and that's obviously not what you're involved in, or you would be in business. So how do we make the distinction? Because this, in my recent memory, of course, as a kid, I was born in the 60s and grew up in the 70s and 80s. And I had the memory of all the stuff, the Watts riots and LA and the Democratic Convention in 68. I was only like 3 or 4 years old, but I mean, all that stuff was fresh in memory. And we kind of got away from that nonsense for a while, where not demonstrations, but actual violence taking place. And then we kind of got back to it again with the Rodney King nonsense in LA. And then a lot of that more recently. But, it's interesting when we ask this question about how do you guys do this? Because, like, the thing for me, the catalyst that's led to a lot of the violent things we've seen in the past 25 years was the World Trade Organization protest in Seattle. I think it was in 98. Yeah. And that's where people attacked Starbucks locations and McDonald's and destroyed people's businesses and their lives because they wanted to protest about the World Trade Organization. So how do you guys draw the distinction? And I've seen some of the causes that you've been behind, bringing down barriers against LGBT bigotry and corporate what's the word I'm looking for? I guess bigotry is the right word. But how do you guys make a distinction, and how do you go about this? Because I think people are curious, particularly in light of what's happening. And I don't know, you guys have nothing to do with the LA thing. I'm not trying to tar you with that. I'm just saying, how do we make that distinction?
Well, of course, and it's incumbent on us to have standards for two things. Number one, for the kind of cause that we take on, and number two, for the type of people that we deploy on those causes. So what I always say is, we want to have people who are passionate about the cause, articulate, but also people who are committed to the idea of peaceful expression. Because here's the thing, that the biggest enemy to peaceful protest is actually violent riots. Now, I don't even give credit the people that you're referring to in Seattle who destroyed the Starbucks, the people in, Ferguson who destroyed the whole town, the people who, in the summer of 2020, I don't give them any credit for their beliefs, because I don't think they actually believe in anything. I mean, the people who are, if you're destroying communities, you're just using the ideology as a sort of, as a way to veil the fact that you want to create death and destruction and chaos. And people attach themselves to all kinds of movements, left wing, right wing. So it's actually doing the biggest disservice to the peaceful people. Like, I think there's a good faith argument to be had on ICE and what they're doing. Number one, on like the immigration policy side, and number two, on the method side, right? So number one, should they be deporting these people? And number two, if they are, what kind of due process is being given, right? No one, like, I don't approve of everything that they've been doing. I think everyone deserves due process. Somebody asked me on a show recently, do I support due process for illegal aliens? I said, of course, because that's the only way we know they're illegal aliens is if we have a process, right? So there's a legitimate grievances, but whenever you start breaking things and breaking the law, and by the way, blocking a freeway is a violent form of protest too. So I don't consider that peaceful protest. You're not serving the cause, but my kind of point is the goal isn't to serve the cause. The goal is power and chaos. So that's something that people need to keep in mind, that these people don't really care about the issues.
Well, I would think we'd probably all agree 100% on that one. Let me ask a question. It's what you do bringing crowds. Does it also involve corporations? As a shareholder in a number of corporations where my tiny number of shares have zero impact on changing policy. I've been to corporate shareholder meetings on occasion if I've been geographically near the places where they're headquartered. That's what I was going to get at.
So we've worked with a lot of activist investors, people trying to kind of change the companies, whether it's for kind of because they don't think the company's being run. So sometimes this is a purely business case where they feel the company isn't being run. It's not ideological. And sometimes it is ideological. It's saying, hey, we want this company to adopt different policies as pertaining to various kind of ideological issues. So on both sides, I mean, generally issues where it's about business tend to be higher budget because there's a lot, more money at stake and than an ideological issue. But we absolutely have protested, many shareholder meetings, and again, in a peaceful, respectful manner. By the way, one other point about peaceful protest, respectful protest is more effective than the reverse, because I was mentioning about New Hampshire, about swing voters, right? I always say, who are you trying to convince, right? So if you're doing a protest, my goal is to convince people who either are on the other side of the issue or don't know anything about the issue to say, hey, maybe let them think about it a little differently. So if you have articulate people, if you have passionate people, you have respectful people, you're going to have people stop and say, let me check this out. Whereas if you block streets and you prevent people from going to work, even the people who agree with you are going to hate you soon enough.
So Adam, how did you get started in this? I mean, you're on campus, you're in college. I mean, I was doing a number of things in college, but it certainly wasn't involved with protests. Things were a little bit different when I went to school, when I went back to school. Was there something on campus? Was a catalyst or something in life or an issue? They're like, wait a second, something's not right. I got to get involved in here. And how did you germinate this idea of crowds on demand?
So I'm not, I worked on a lot of political campaigns, mostly on the Democratic side. I consider myself an independent now because the Democratic Party has just sort of drifted too far.
It's gone. There's no Democratic Party. There's about 3 people left on the party.
I never say never because anything can be rehabilitated. And I in no way affiliate myself with the Republican Party either, though we serve clients, liberals and conservatives, but we don't work for Republicans and Democrats. Liberals and conservatives, yes, because there's legitimate views on both sides.
There you go. It's very fair.
But the way I was starting working with these campaigns, and a lot of these guys you mentioned, Colonel, the 60s, right? And the 60s, right? A lot of the guys running the campaign were out of that era. They were kind of ex-hippies in an era where you could draw 10, 20,000 college students very, very easily. So they would be like, Adam, I was in charge of a lot of the Southern California side of things. And they were like, Adam, get 10,000 students out to our rally. And I was like, guys, this is going to be really hard. Like this, you don't realize this is like 2010, 11. Like you can't do that anymore.
And they did it with flyers, basically.
I think that's what they did. I mean, they, in the promise of free pot, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
I think
Adam, I think the guys in the 60s had an advantage. They weren't competing with smartphones and PlayStations.
Right. That's true. Right. There was nothing going on. It was all outside.
Right. And there was kind of a fun to that. Right. And so they would tell me to do this. So obviously it's very hard to get that level of turnout. But again, that's kind of where I got the idea of the context, because I heard a lot of very eloquent speeches that never got amplified because they were given in front of 10 people. And imagine the best speeches, in front of just a small audience, it wouldn't have any resonance. So even if you got 100 people, 1,000 people out there to listen to a candidate speak, it changes the dynamics. But even more so, guys, let's just say your opponent is having 5,000 people rally, right? And I just have 25 people outside protesting, respectfully. But now the media covers it as a both sides thing. So they have 5,000, we have 25. So we're a fraction of 1%, right? And yet we're getting a third, a half of the coverage. This person at a rally, these protesters protested the rally, right? So it's kind of, it's what we were getting people, the candidates is what's called earned media. So for your audience, earned media is basically, this is what you would have to pay to advertise if you wanted to buy those ads. So we're generating 6-7 figures in earned media for these people and getting paid peanuts. So I was kind of thinking, hey, we're in LA. There's a lot of people kind of out of work. Why not put them to work attending these kind of events where there's a huge demand and the value is there? And it kind of got started there. And it wasn't just, and by the way, it wasn't just rallies and protests. It was PR stunts on behalf of companies, like to really draw a bunch of attention there. So it was a lot of things like that.
Does any of this involve, events like flash crowds? Do you ever do anything
Absolutely.
like that?
We do, and mostly for kind of a promotional thing for businesses. But yes, absolutely.
So I mean, a business that it wants to do something like that could hire you for a non-political purpose whatsoever, just to get their brand out there.
There's a misnomer that most of what we do is political. It varies by the year, but it's not for a vast majority of our existence. Most of what we did was not political. It was a lot of promotional events or maybe business to business disputes, but not always politics. So we do a lot of non-political things, and I love that because it's a little less controversial. Plus, we can hire actors. So when it's kind of a promotional event, we hire actors. When I started the company, we hired actors for politics too, but I've moved away from that because I didn't like the ethics of that. Because I think the ethics of that didn't sit right in my book. We got bad publicity on it about that, and it was justified because now we've pivoted to saying, hey, we're providing people who already agree with the cause to support the cause, rather than people who might be agnostic or disagree with the cause.
So I think it's interesting, when we talk about this, I use the phrase, if it's incorrect, you can correct me, but paid protesters, if we have the concept of paid protesters, you talked about the look of having actors, that definitely could be a problem. We talk about political issues here, that can be detrimental to the cause that you're trying to achieve. But paid protesters, the initial reaction for most people, I suspect, is, well, wait a second, no, that's, but there's got to be some value and merit to this. I mean, it's not necessarily a wrong thing. Maybe we automatically defer to just a negative view of that. I mean, any comments on that? I mean,
I completely agree. By the way, is with everything, if you're an independent thinker, don't assume something is bad or something is good. Drill into what it is you specifically don't like about it. And if you still don't like it, that's fine, right? So let's drill into paid protesting, right? So think about talk show hosts, right? Tucker Carlson, Rachel Maddow, two of the most wealthiest, best paid talk show hosts in the country, right? So they both get paid, I think, 8 figures in some way to speak their beliefs, right? And they're generally given the benefit of the doubt that they believe what they're saying, right? So they're getting tens of millions of dollars to spew liberal or conservative talking points, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a stretch to say, so they are genuine when they're getting tens of millions, but a protester getting a few $100 is somehow, they don't believe in it, right? They don't believe.
There you go.
So I think of it as like, think about it, if you're like you guys, are more on the conservative end. If someone offered to pay you even a considerable amount of money to demonstrate for BLM or whatever, you guys would decline that offer, right? And I would imagine that conversely, those BLM people would not be out there demonstrating for conservative or certainly not for Trumpian causes. So the thing is that what we pay people is we pay people well. We pay people enough to kind of turn out because, people are busy. Life is busy. But we don't pay people enough to essentially change their beliefs on our behalf.
No, I got you that, but I would imagine that somewhere in amongst the crowd, you have to have some, I don't know, what's the phrase here, Bob, true believers or people that actually know the issues, whether it's a corporate governance issue or something that's coming up at a shareholders meeting or it's a political rally. You've got to have some people in that crowd that actually know what the heck they're talking about, not just to come out to be part of it. Because, mass moves mountains. That's the bottom line. It's like glaciers may move slowly, but they move entire mountain ranges. And that's what can happen with a demonstration. If you got 3,000 people show up, that can be quite massive, particularly on a campus. So amongst that, though, it's got to be some people that really know what's going on. Is that something you have to plan on these events? And how do you do that?
Oh, right. So yes, and yes to all those questions, right? So obviously what we do is in every crowd, we want people who are excellent advocates and people who are generally articulate, but aren't necessarily media ready. I mean, if you go to any demonstration, there are people who are more articulate and there are people who are less articulate. We try to have as many articulate people who have specific life experiences about this stuff, right? And the reality is that it works well. I mean, one of the other kind of ethical things that I like to say is I think there's also a misnomer that the number of people demonstrating on an issue is some sort of barometer of the overall national sentiment. So you're saying, so there's this sort of idea that having people compensated to turn out there makes something look bigger than it really is. But the way that I look at it is, I think if you think that, you don't really understand how movements work, because the reality is there's so many movements that we work on where 80% of the people agree with our position, but the 20% who don't are the ones who are always out at the meeting. So we're actually hired by the 80% to protest, to be the counterforce to the 20% who are always getting their way because they're always there. So if you're kind of saying, oh, well, there's 100 people on one side and 10 people on the other side showing up, so therefore 10 to 1 support the cause, then that's really not a good understanding of how protest works. The idea of protest is to raise awareness of an issue and make sure people know about it, right? And then it's up to people to make their decisions about how to proceed.
No, 100%. No, I wasn't making a statement. In fact, to me, the concept of relying on size is really anathema to the whole founding of a republic. That's why we have a system, we have it set up so that we didn't have tyranny of the majority. So the 50+1 of the country couldn't dictate to what the rest of the country has. That's why I have a bicameral legislature with each state is just as important. So Wyoming with 550,000 people is just as important as California in the Senate. Sure. Now the people represent the House. So yeah, no, but certainly there is, unrelated to what I said, but certainly there is a point to size. I mean, during the COVID scam, we had 600,000 people marching every weekend in Melbourne, Australia, in a country of just 30 million people. That's insane. And in Melbourne, that was fully about 30%, 40% of the entire population of the metropolitan area. I mean, that's truly a statement when those people show up in that way. But I don't say that 10 people or 1,000 people is really an issue. The fact that somebody's protesting means that somebody's unhappy. And as far as I'm concerned, we should consider the interest of all people. That doesn't necessarily mean the minority wins, but certainly everyone's thoughts should be considered. I imagine that's kind of the idea behind bringing crowds on demand for a protest.
Correct, and because we can force people to pay attention to the issue, right? So the concept of a protest, as you correctly articulated, is you can't ignore it, right? When you're outside a major building, outside a major event, now you see it, now you're paying attention. If you don't agree, you don't agree, right? So that's kind of the issue. I mean, it's interesting. So I'm reading some of the comments, so I actually want to respond to one of them, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I definitely don't agree with paying people to protest, so anyone who needs money will join regardless of the cause. Well, let me just give you an example. I mean, New Hampshire, very patriotic place. Think about the founding of our country, right? In Royal Britain, in Royal United Kingdom, under King George, members of parliament were not paid for being members of parliament. So who do you think consisted of the parliament? Right? It was wealthy landowners who could essentially afford to serve in parliament at with no compensation. So we have a compensated legislature, right? And we don't love that we pay them, and because they're annoying. We're not happy to pay them, but at the end of the day, and then they don't always deserve it. But at the end of the day, if we didn't pay them, then truly only the wealthy could be in the Congress, right? So think of protesting as the same concept as. And if you're on the right, you should really understand this, because many people on the left are more likely to have flexible work situations such as tech work, gig work, where you can go out to protest, right? They're less likely to have 9-to-5 jobs that mandate that they be in the office. They're probably less likely to have families that, childcare, all that. So the barrier to attending a protest for someone on the left is actually, generally speaking, less than the barrier for someone on the right. So it doesn't mean that a conservative doesn't care about the issue, but it's like, are you going to pay for childcare for your kid, take off a day of compensated work to attend a protest, right? So it's not fair to demand that person make this huge sacrifice when a hippie with a trust fund can attend a protest for, that's just what they do. That's what they do all day.
Right.
So I guess my point is, I actually think that's not fair. So I guess that's my response to that one commenter.
Nice.
Is that it's not fair to hourly workers or people who might not have the flexibility or resources that you might have or wish that people had.
That's a good point you make there, Adam. In fact, it is true. And, a lot of times, especially a lot of the audience that are chatting here are my viewers from South Africa who follow my program. And
I'm a
in South
Swart. We have a lot of Swarts in South Africa.
Oh, indeed, quite a few. But yeah, so a lot of them, there's a lot of people who are mobilized because they don't have jobs. Unemployment's so high. They're offered a KFC meal and a T-shirt and a ride, and off they go. And unfortunately, so that's a negative connotation with a lot of folks. Also, South Africa's history demonstrations have a negative perception for many people, not for everyone, but many people. But you talk, not you talk to me. Your company also does advocacy. I'm curious about that. So how does that work? Let's say, is it like take up a cause? Like for instance, if somebody's in favor of fracking in Pennsylvania or opposed to it, is that something you take up advocacy for? And how does the company provide for that?
Absolutely, we would, and we would evaluate that. Obviously, we would never work the different sides of the same issue. But for example, insert one issue, we might work more on the environmentalist side, so maybe opposing the fracking. In other cases, we might work kind of in favor of it. And part of that is going to determine on who contacts us, and part of it's going to determine on the relative strength of people's arguments. Now, one thing I like to stress is we keep all client or potential client information confidential. So if we decide to end up taking up the opposition, we're not going to go reveal everything that you tell us, right? It's not professional. So we kind of adhere to a lot of the same rules a lawyer might adhere to, even if that we don't have to do that. So yeah, we would take those type of things we do all the time. We'd gather people, we'd kind of try to make the most cohesive arguments possible on the subject. I mean, that's a great example where on the one hand you have environmental damage, and on the other hand you have jobs and economic development, and lots of good arguments on both sides. Like another example is like labor disputes. We work a lot on the side of labor, but a lot on the side of management, probably more management than labor, because labor has the capacity to sort of force their own people to go out there and punish them if they don't. So we tend to work more for management for that reason.
So do you have in-house a lot of this human capital, or do you have to reach out and subcontract or bring people on board? Like for instance, say we threw fracking out there, or another one might be issue of saving the Chesapeake Bay because of pollution, and retaining ponds. Do you have to reach out and get people who have environmental background, or people who have legal background, or people that might know a specific issue at times, or are you able to build that in-house? Because that would take an awful lot of capability.
We build it in-house but oftentimes we will do proactive outreach. So if it's something very, very specific where we want, now not every person who attends our environmental protests have to be environmental experts who have scientific knowledge. They might just be people who are passionate about the environment. Whereas if we start an advocacy group on the subject, obviously we'd want someone who has environmental and hopefully legal experience on the subject.
Well, that's where I was going, particularly with the advocacy. So like, for instance, if a client hires you because they want to, I'm just throwing this one out there, but just, let's say Starlink is not licensed in America and they want a satellite-based system, and they want someone to be an advocate for satellite-based internet communications to reach rural areas because WiMAX didn't play out so well. So in that case, you'd have to have someone that knew something about telecommunications, satellite communications,
Absolutely.
The FCC. It's going to be difficult, I would imagine, to have a lot of that in-house. So that might be an occasion where you have to bring in someone from outside. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. And where we do. And what we do is we put it under, it all is in coordination with what the client wants. But in some cases, we'd start an organization, have an executive director, have, general counsel, legal counsel as needed as part of that effort, right? So one of the benefits that we provide to our clients is advocacy from the ground up. So, with all this cancel culture, both from the right and from the left, a lot of times a well-heeled interest might come to us and say, hey, Adam, I really want to start something on this subject, but I don't want myself or my company in any way associated with it. I want kind of one level removed. And that sounds kind of shady on one level, but here's why it's not. It's not about being shady. It's actually about saying, I want to be able to participate without essentially having people come after me, my family, my livelihood, my board seats, whatever, right? In the era of cancel culture, a lot of times, if it's like this individual or this company is funding this effort, now they start getting targeted by a ton of mouth breathing cancel culture activists, right? So we function in one sense to say, hey, you just give this case to us, tell us kind of the general budget that we're going to deploy, and then we kind of take it from there.
Hey, folks, you're listening to Common Sense Conservatives right here on WSMN. You can catch it on wsmn.com. You can also catch us on Todd's favorite word, the interwebs. You can catch us on the internet on multiple locations, Truckers Independent Broadcasting Network, also on my channel at Colonel Chris Wyatt on the YouTube platform. And I think we're on Facebook, too, a number of other places you can catch out there. But every Wednesday night from 7 to 9 p.m., the Common Sense Conservatives, oftentimes with guests. And our guest tonight is the CEO and founder of Crowds on Demand. And that, of course, is Adam Swart, who's talking to us about this. Now, Adam, you've touched on something that I wanted to raise, and I think it's a very important point for this because it's important for you from a corporate standpoint, I'm certain, but that's why I want to tease it out. So, in the military, we have inspector generals who are responsible for things, and many corporations and universities in particular have things like ombudsman to ensure that someone can go somewhere if there's a complaint and ensure that there's ethical conduct. Now, I agree with you. What you just said, there's not anything inherently wrong with a degree of separation if a corporation wants to achieve something for a number of reasons that are legitimate. But how do you ensure, or do you have a mechanism in place at Crowds on Demand about ethical conduct and about, do you have an ombudsman or something like that? Or do you keep an in-house attorney, or how do you guys handle that? Because I'm sure even if you've never done anything wrong, you've probably been accused of misdoing at one point or another.
Absolutely. And we do have kind of counsel that we will look to in regards to kind of issues around First Amendment, right? And of course, we're accused of a ton of crazy crap, as you can imagine. And I mean, a baseless accusation obviously doesn't concern me, but the idea of, hey, well, generally, number one, we want to follow the law, and number two, we want to conduct ourselves ethically, because I think there's so much misinformation about what we do. And that's part of why I go on shows like this, or I've started to recently, is to sort of say, hey, let's correct some of the misnomers, both that we engage in any illegal activity, but also kind of on the ethical side of things, so that at least people can understand my point of view and to kind of better drill into this stuff. So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of safeguards. I mean, I look at a lot of these campaigns on kind of a risk basis and say, look, for example, we kind of declined to get involved in this LA thing. I mean, just FYI, obviously we're the biggest protest company in the country. So with any kind of major social movement, we're probably getting contacted by well-heeled folks on, one side or the other, or maybe both sides of the subject, just because of the nature of the business. So we field a lot of requests, and this one is kind of interesting. Obviously, there's certain requests that we can't do just because the budget doesn't match the ambition, right? Like if you're trying to get a bill passed in Congress and you're kind of saying, hey, I have a budget of $50,000, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to kind of achieve your objective within the budget that you have, right? So you're better off making kind of a less lofty goal. But in this kind of case, it's not really a budget issue. It's more an issue of, if you put protesters, peaceful protesters, let's just say I want to have the ICE protests, right? And I want to have peaceful protesters. But the problem is there are all these violent Antifa agitators all around these protests. So how can I ensure, or how can I make it likely that my guy holding sign isn't going to end up standing next to some wackadoodle throwing a Molotov cocktail, and then authorities trying to discern who is who are going to have trouble? So that's kind of creating an unnecessary risk, and also lending myself to kind of creating the false impression that perhaps we are behind kind of the bad stuff. So,
no, it sounds like prudence is a good judgment there.
Well,
it's just staying away from stuff like that.
Well, the thing is, I've been doing this 13 years, right?
Yeah.
So number one, we have kind of checklist procedures, but we also just have my gut instinct on these things. there's certain things where I'm like, this is gonna go south. I'd rather pass on it. And that's the reality.
Well, the reason I asked that question is, and I think it's a fair question, and you've kind of addressed it, but I want to go a little bit further before I turn over to Todd, is that in South Africa, a number of years ago, during the time since you started doing this, a British firm called Bell Pottinger was hired, a public relations firm, and they created a false narrative about white monopoly capital in South Africa, which did grievous harm to social structure and to business and to a lot of South Africans, and has really created a lot of mess with racial animosity in South Africa about this white monopoly capital. So there are times when there are actors like the people who hired Bell Pottinger who have evil intent, and that's why I asked the question about an ombudsman or how you go about this. I mean, are these sometimes are they CEO decisions? Are they board decisions? No, we're not getting involved with the LA stuff. We're not doing that. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. I mean, is there a process to protect you? Because obviously, you have a company. I don't know if you have shareholders, if it's publicly traded or not, but clearly you want the company to continue being a going venture and hire people and make money and do things that make a difference. So do you have something other than just a good sense of, well, this smells bad, to protect you? Because Bell Pottinger was evil. They did it intentionally, and they've suffered sanctions, criminal sanctions for their actions.
Right. And that's the thing, is we risk adjust a lot of things. So number one, there's the ethical consideration, and number two, there's a legal consideration. So we try to run things that feel a little bit more tenuous. So like, okay, fracking, anti-fracking, that's a fairly innocuous issue, right? Whereas you're talking about South Africa, these are issues where you're essentially, I'm not super familiar with the issue, but you're basically saying that they were essentially running kind of race hate ads, kind of campaign to kind of say, hey, the white South Africans are stealing all the land and making things really bad for the black people, to kind of maybe encourage like hatred of white South Africans. It's
generally speaking, it's sort of along those lines. There's also a distractionary measure to distract from wholesale theft going on from the state fiscus by politicians who are the ones who pay for this. Yeah.
I mean, South Africa is a total mess. I mean, the fact that black voters.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Black voters are voting for the Democratic Alliance, which is historically like the white party, correct? The white run party. And my understanding is a ton of black folks in South Africa are saying, I'm done with the ANC. I'm voting for the Democratic Alliance because the ANC is kind of corrupt race haters, right? I mean, and the Democratic Alliance isn't a right-wing party, right? It's a
no. It's a left-wing party. Yeah, it's not far left, but it's left to center. But now, for not knowing about South Africa, that's not a bad take initially. Right. So let me turn over to Todd before we run out of time with you this hour, and let me thank you, Adam, for your answers to my questions. I think they were fair questions, and you answered them fairly.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate it. Now I know you can't say what companies or names that you've turned down, if you will, but maybe give us some ideas, if you will, of some things that people maybe wanted you to do that were very heinous, if you will, maybe Nazi imagery or something like that. Can you talk about that?
Well, pretty much every crazy thing we've probably been approached about it at one point or another. Yeah. So I remember, I think we even got approached by a Jewish Nazi, which is kind of weird. I mean, there's every combination of person out there, Todd. So yeah, I mean, we've been approached by Nazis, as you can imagine. Obviously, we wouldn't take that. We've been approached by race haters. We've been approached by people who I think are agents of foreign governments.
Yeah.
In terms of one of the ones I'll talk about that I'm really proud of is one called Delete Facebook. Have you heard of hashtag Delete Facebook? So in after a lot of this stuff came to light about how Facebook was kind of not stealing people, but misusing people's data and kind of instigating hatred. I mean, people say, I turn people against each other. I don't. Facebook really does, because they have the algorithms that get everybody to be so hateful and antagonistic, right? So we ran this campaign called Delete Facebook, right? And we had all these demonstrators around Zuckerberg. Every appearance that Zuckerberg would make in public, right, we would have people around this. And it kind of went viral on X. It was called Twitter at the time. Hashtag Delete Facebook. So much that I almost like to take credit for the fact that they renamed the company. They don't even call themselves Facebook anymore.
Right.
They call themselves Meta. because essentially the Facebook name was so trash that they don't even like using the term Facebook anymore because Facebook is associated with hate and all of that, which I think is very fair. So I kind of take credit for like a little, at least like some degree of credit for kind of helping change the narrative and make sure people know Facebook equals hatred, and actually it helped push those guys in a good direction because they're not perfect, very far from it, but they've really tried to minimize political content and be a little bit more, they do a lot of other crap that I disagree with, but they've really tried to make it their platform less political. So that's good.
Absolutely. And what are some warnings, if you could give to the right, if you will, about, say that protests, if you will, legitimate or illegitimate or bought and paid for or crowds on demand, etc. What kind of warning could you give them or advice?
Well, one of the things I tell my conservative friends, and I have friends on both sides, is don't do what you feel that the left did to you. The Biden administration did a lot to suppress free speech in this country, whether it was investigating parents for speaking out at school board meetings or, encouraging banks to debank, conservative organizations saying that they're hate groups, right? That is wrong, but don't do anything to them and don't give Trump or the people in power any power you wouldn't want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez having over you in 4 years. So that's the thing. Power is rarely returned from the government to the people. It is only given. So if you create, for example, on these
we
lost him. There he is.
Allowing start creating this precedent where the president can deploy active duty Marines on American cities, I think that's very dangerous. And I don't want to do that when I think National Guard, federal law enforcement is more than capable of it. So my thing is I want to make sure that conservatives know there needs to be respect for due process, and what I would do is try to enshrine free speech protections. Like Trump said, he wanted to be the most free speech president in history. And I don't really think he has been, but I think he could be. And I would encourage them to do that because it's going to be good for conservatives. Because believe me, the left is going to be better at censoring you than you will ever be at censoring them.
Right. Adam, I got to say, you've been very fair here this entire interview. I really like a lot of stuff you're talking about, even though I know we're on a different side of the aisle on some of the issues, but a lot of stuff you're talking about, especially in free speech, I really do appreciate what you're talking about there. And I want to turn it over to John real quick if I could.
Echoing Todd's sentiment there, it's nice to hear that even though we may not agree on issues and agendas, we can at least agree about the suppression of the Biden administration and such. It's good to hear people on the left are coming up to that, because we've been attacked by it so hard through the years. So we've talked quite a bit about what it is you do and stuff, but we are seeing a protest in Los Angeles now where people are violent. People are throwing frozen water bottles at cops. They're attacking law enforcement officers. They're burning cars. They're attacking police officers for whatever reason. I don't know. I have nothing to do with ICE. So you made it quite clear your organization doesn't engage in that, nor will you do business with people that do. But do you know who does this? Are you aware of anybody that hires these people? Obviously, they're being sent in because they're dressing for it.
Well, yeah, there's money behind this for sure. And here's a few ways there's money behind it. Number one, the fact that there's tactical gear being handed out. You guys know I've never bought tactical gear before, but I know people who are into that stuff, and it's not cheap. So someone's buying it, and they're buying it in large quantities, right? So that's pretty expensive. Number two, I do feel that there are some informants within ICE. I don't have evidence of it, but they seem to know exactly where these raids are going to take place before they come. So there's some way that they know. So if it's not an informant, I'm just really curious. I want to know the answer to that, right? And number three, these people are able to gather a ton of people on short notice, even at like wee hours of the morning or late hours at night. Right, that is a rapid reaction force. This sounds more like guerrilla warfare than like protest, right? So you're able to gather 200 people in about 15 minutes to go to an address. This requires technological infrastructure and a ton of people on call.
Yep.
That's another sign that there's something at play here. How are they funding it, right? Well, it's what I call the Russian doll model. So if you know what Russian dolls are, it's like little dolls that fold into bigger dolls. So the thing of it is, some billionaire in the center, that's the little doll, right? And the guy on the street throwing you referred to the ice in the water bottle, or worse, the Molotov cocktail or whatever, right? That's the biggest doll, right? And in between, there's a foundation here. There's a advocacy group there. There might be a corporation that they create here and there, right? And there's nothing wrong with anonymous free speech, but there is something wrong with anonymous funding of violence. But it gives two incentives, right? The guy, the Antifa activist, doesn't want to think that they're doing the behest of a billionaire. The billionaire may be doing it for ideological reasons, but they may have profit reasons, right? Number two is the fact that the billionaire, there's never ever going to be evidence that a certain billionaire was behind it. You know why? Because they keep their hands clean. It's kind of like there's never going to be something, because these guys didn't become billionaires by being stupid. So they
hire a third party person to do their dirty work for them.
That's absolutely right. So that's how it works. Now, one thing that I think you should be aware of that I think is going to happen is, the other thing is, it's not legal to pay someone to throw a Molotov cocktail, but it is legal to cover that person's legal expenses and other expenses pending the trial. So there's this gentleman, I shouldn't call him a gentleman, named Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player Carmelo Anthony, but this other guy. He's like a kid named Carmelo Anthony, who I guess is accused of killing. He's like a black teenager who's accused of killing a white teenager in Texas. If I got the details wrong, I apologize. But basically, a ton of money was raised for this kid, Carmelo Anthony, and they've actually moved his family to like a mansion because so much money has been raised. So I'm like, I'm not saying in this case that happened, but I was thinking when I saw that, they could literally use the same structure to pay violent agitators, where you do these acts of violence, and then you get your legal fees paid for, but you also get put up at the Bel Air Hotel or something pending your trial. And you could ostensibly say, well, it's necessary for their safety or whatever, right? And that's a totally legal way for wealthy interests to pay for it, and no one would know who's actually paying that bill.
So, in your years of experience doing this, I mean, there's a history of foreign countries that are in opposition to a country, and they try to put in plants and agitators and such like that.
Yes.
Are they foreign, like say Iran, are they funding a lot of these agitators for violence in these schools and stuff?
I certainly believe they were funding some of the Palestine matter. I mean, I think that's fairly clear, even though I don't have evidence of it. I mean, again, the evidence is the structure, right? But are they funding this? Possibly. I mean, there are certain countries that really benefit. It's not a tactical objective. It's a strategic objective. The strategic objective is to make American democracy look weak and our system look weak, because what they want is for all these foreign autocrats care about, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, whatever, is remaining in power and continuing to steal money from their citizens, right? So in order to do that, their citizens from time to time say, wait, we want to be more like America, where they have good democracy, where the people are well off, etc. So they want to be able to tell their people, no, America is a shithole. Look at what's going on. So they do have an incentive to fund it. So again, I want to be clear, I don't have evidence of that. So I like to be clear on, like, I don't want to make unfounded allegations, but certainly they have incentives. And believe me, if they want to do it, it would be fairly easy for them to get that money there.
So yeah, speculatively speaking, it's very possible and feasible that that's what's going on.
Yes.
Now we have an event coming up here this weekend, No Kings. Are you involved in that in any way? Is there anything that we should expect? Because this is a nationwide event. It's going to hit a lot of small towns and big cities, and quite possibly there might be violent outbreaks in some of these bigger cities. A lot of people are concerned.
Well, John, one of the things to keep in mind is that I think, and Todd, you asked me about kind of advice for conservatives. It's important not to put peaceful protests that you disagree with in the same bucket as violent protests, right? So I think now, my understanding is that this No Kings movement is intended to be nonviolent. So
correct.
If there are violent protesters in that, I condemn it strongly. But I don't think that there should be an instant before this even happens lobbying saying, oh, well, this is a violent movement, when it looks like the intention of a vast majority of those participants is to be peaceful, right?
So here's a pattern, Adam, is we see these people that hold, like, say, No Kings. They got a lot of events going on this weekend, and these events are 1, 2, 3 hour events.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to see the violence in those 3 hour events. You're going to see it afterward.
Right.
So what we're seeing here is a pattern of people where the left is saying, well, that was a peaceful protest. Yeah, that 2 to 3 hours was, but what ensued after that is what they accuse of J6 on, you know? Sure, Trump was peaceful, and all of a sudden they say, well, you know, you went nuts on us here in D.C. So that's what we see in a lot of these events. So I'm just wondering maybe if you're hearing anything down the pike, if you have any ideas of things, what people may expect. That's all I was trying to get at. But I understand that you yourself don't engage in that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and peaceful protests, and again, when it comes to peaceful protests around our civil liberties, we take on those causes on both sides, because I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I'm a civil libertarian. Even if I don't even agree with 100% with the message, I agree with it. I mean, for example, this Abrego Garcia guy, I mean, he seems like a messed up guy, but he needs to be given his rights, even if he's messed up. So I was glad that they brought him back, and now I'm glad that he's facing charges as he should, right? So you can be very tough, but you can be very tough within the bounds of the law, and that's kind of the reality. So I do think that there will be sporadic acts of violence. I don't want to use the term mostly peaceful, because that's kind of almost a punchline at this point.
Right.
But I hope it will be, because I think that the message can be good, and I think if the message sticks to our civil liberties and highlighting that concerns that the Trump administration has overstepped in terms of the civil liberties, and I personally happen to believe that the Trump administration has overstepped in terms of civil liberties. I think that they're getting out of control, and they have to return to due process. You can do mass deportations while making sure to give these people their rights. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So I think it's fine. But I think that it's incumbent upon the peaceful people not just to condemn violence, but to distance themselves from violence. I'm actually working on something. It's at an early level now, but it's called a Protesters' Bill of Rights and Responsibilities that I'm going to want every advocacy group to sign on to, that basically says, every law enforcement agency to sign on to, that says, here are the rights that every protester must be afforded, but here are the responsibilities incumbent upon them within those rights. And I'm drafting it. I'm working on it, because I think that's going to have, what I want is a common set of standards across the country, where to make sure that the peaceful protest is completely respected and facilitated, whereas violent uprisings are punished and
all right, folks, we'll be back after the break. Adam, thank you very much for being here. God bless.
Thank you, Chris, Todd, John.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packard. Demonstrators against President Trump's immigration crackdown expected to rally for a sixth evening in Los Angeles. The tone of the demonstration seeming much calmer today. Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna urging protesters to make their voices heard peacefully.
We will facilitate all peaceful First Amendment activity.
As opposed to last night when LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell says 3 individuals were arrested and charged with attacks against officers.
These were deliberate attacks, acts that injured officers who were simply doing their job out there to protect the public.
U.S. and Chinese officials say they've reached a tentative agreement to get trade relations back on track. Details scarce, but President Trump said China will make it easier for the U.S. to get much-needed magnets and rare earth minerals. In Gaza, the IDF says it recovered 2 bodies of deceased hostages in Khan Yunis, a city in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. This is ABC News. Google has offered another round of buyouts to workers in areas of search, advertising, research, and engineering. It's not clear how many employees are affected. Stocks ended the day slightly lower on Wall Street, even though an inflation report came in as analysts expected.
On a month-to-month basis, the prices we pay for nearly everything rose 0.1% between April and May, and 2.4% over the past 12 months. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says the increase was driven largely by the rising price of housing and food. While the latest increase in CPI is small, observers on Wall Street say the bill for U.S. tariffs may come due in the coming months.
ABC's Jim Ryan, the Dow was nearly even. Scientists with the World Weather Attribution say human-caused climate change boosted Iceland and Greenland's temperatures by several degrees during a record-setting heat wave in May. They say the Greenland ice sheet melted faster than usual, and parts of Iceland saw temperatures more than 18 degrees above average. Dave Packer, ABC News.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting truly great candidates for your roles? It seems impossible to find them, but they have to be out there somewhere, right? Well, they're not hard to find when you know where to go, and that place is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. And because these people are actively looking for jobs just like yours, it's easy to find the right person right away. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter, you're missing out. So see what it's like when the impossible is easy. When you go to ZipRecruiter.com/free right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago, servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives. If you weren't around in the first hour, we had the founder of Crowds on Demand. Appropriate with all the nice peaceful protests that are happening in LA to have him on. And I liked a lot of stuff he talked about, and I'd like to have him back on whenever he does that. The protesters' Bill of Rights, if you will. I'd love to see more about that. I think it's probably a decent idea. But Colonel, what do you think about what's going on in LA? And of course, I know you were about to jump in whenever he said you didn't think he should send the Marines into LA. I know you were about to correct something, but talk about that real quick.
So look, the crux of this is, first off, a false narrative, a narrative that this is a legitimate protest. Number one, and also the lies about what Trump administration is doing. Number one, the Trump administration is not deporting immigrants. That's a lie. That's a factual lie.
Right.
These are not immigrants. These are criminal alien invaders who violated our sovereignty. Many of them are convicted, hardcore felony criminals, rapists, murderers, and pedophiles, amongst others, and arsonists. So that's the first thing. Anybody that would protest and start attacking federal officials and federal facilities over protecting rapists, convicted rapists, convicted murderers, people with final deportation orders. That's who's being kicked out of the country right now. They'll get around to the illegal aliens, which we haven't got to yet. They'll get around to them eventually. But right now, it's just these people. And to see anybody defend that, oops, somebody's zipping down the road there. To see anybody defend that is beyond the pale. So that's the first part of it. The second part of this is that this lie that Gavin Newsom, who fancies himself as a president, the man is not garbage collector material, let alone gubernatorial presidential material, runs around and spews his mouth saying that Trump is unconstitutional, illegal, and it's self-aggrandizement. Wrong. Title 10 authorizes the president to do exactly what he's doing with no requirement to notify any governor when he federalizes National Guard troops. Statement of fact, federal Title 10. In addition to that, to a 1794 law after the Constitution was implemented, also gives him the right to do this without notifying state governors. And finally, a 1878 insurrection law allows him to do it as well. And that grew out of the Civil War. That's why it came in 1878, because an insurrection took place in this country. So this has been done repeatedly. Unfortunately, the memory of Democrats is pretty thin. The last time it was done in this fashion was 1992 with the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles when active duty troops were deployed, not the National Guard. So the president has the authority to federalize troops at any time. So this is a lie. The next part of this, too, is that the federal troops, federalize the National Guard, the federal troops coming for 29 Palms are not interacting with rioters unless the rioters attack a federal building or federal officials, because that's what they're doing. They're pulling guard duty on federal buildings that were left undefended in Seattle during Chaz, left undefended by Karen Bass, who incited these riots, incited this violence, and should be arrested on the spot, and by the governor, who's irresponsible and failed to do anything. The people who are shooting at protesters, the people who are arresting protesters are the Los Angeles Police Department, the same people that stood idly by and let this metastasize. That's my thoughts on it. Enough of this nonsense. We cannot have lawlessness. This is not South Africa in 1985. This is not London, where it's been taken over by aliens. This is the United States. Law and order must prevail. And the nonsense that occurred in this country, across the country in 2020, cannot be allowed to repeat, or we have no country. And these are criminal innovators. Sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of London, Speaking of London, I heard the other day I was watching something, and it's something like 40+% of the people or residents of London are
80% of 90% of east side of London is foreign born. They're not English. They're not even Brits. But God forbid you say something in the street, they'll attack you and harass you as if you're running on the streets of Riyadh. It's unbelievable. Leicester is a minority English city. Only 20% of the residents of Leicester are English, an English city. Manchester is rapidly becoming a minority English city, and the same in Birmingham. I went to a Cricket World Cup a couple years ago, New Zealand versus Pakistan, and I thought that I was in Lahore. 40,000 people there, 39,000 of them were rooting for Pakistan, and most of them lived in the greater metropolitan area. Anyway.
Right. So if Pakistan was so great, why did you flee to go to London? Why do you want to make or London or England or Great Britain into where you fled?
Well, it's no different than what we're seeing in Los Angeles, burning the American flag and singing the praise of Mexico. If Mexico is so great, why don't you go back to it?
Yeah, why are you fighting deportation to go back?
Well, and in fact, we see the figures here. Let me get the numbers here earlier. The people arrested here, the government arrested these people. What's the number? I'm trying to find it here. 330 illegal aliens were arrested during the riots last night. 113 of them have prior criminal convictions. Attempted murder, attempted murder. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. 157 people have been arrested for assault and obstruction-related charges, including illegal immigrants and some U.S. citizens. People throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers. That's not civil unrest. That's an insurrection. That's a genuine insurrection. For the January 6th committee, you morons, let me introduce you to a genuine insurrection, one fomented by Democratic members of Congress.
That's it right there.
I mean,
I thought you were reaching
No, members of the city council of Los Angeles have been caught on film encouraging this violence. The mayor is responsible for this violence. The same mayor who said there was no problem, but then last night implemented a 10-hour curfew. If there's no problem, why is it 10 hours? I mean, that's basically, there's no darkness. You can only be walking around during the daytime if it's 10 hours because it's summertime. So, you know, it's time for this to end. Support for the Democratic Party is hovering at 20% or less nationwide.
But I guarantee you in the next election, they're still going to be neck and neck with Republicans whenever it comes to any election, especially the midterms that are coming up. I dare say they're going to be neck and neck with Republicans, and we're going to be counting to the last day probably how many Republicans are going to be or how much in the majority they're going to have. It's going to be narrow, I dare say, because so many of these people in the country are just going to vote for them. I don't understand that. How do you change the minds?
Yeah, I don't know how you change minds. It's look, people are brainwashed and indoctrinated. I remember growing up, people were Democrats because their parents were Democrats. I mean, that's not a good reason to be Democrat. It's also not a good reason to be a Republican. You should
Right.
achieve where you're at on the political spectrum based on your own views, your own education, your own thought process, not because of what your family did or this, that, and the other. That's it's anyway. Look, it's sad, but these are criminals. And
Right.
anyone who has sympathy for them should be, if they're out there causing chaos, arrested, prosecuted, indicted, prosecuted, convicted, and executed. I mean, in prison.
Right.
Sorry, I
Well,
keep putting that Freudian slip there.
Here's some good news. A federal judge sides with anti-Israel ringleader Mohammed Khalil halts Trump's administrative deportation bid. Or bad news, if you will. But apparently, yeah. So this guy gets to stay in this country, basically doing the same things that the gentleman that we just had on the first hour talked about. Here's inciting riots, if you will, fomenting rebellion or whatever the case may be. He gets to stay in the country.
Yeah. Look, I saw that. This is ridiculous. This guy is a violent offender. Don't send him abroad. Just put him in prison. Just put him in prison.
Yeah, put him in jail. Put him in the Tombs or wherever. I think he's in New York, so put him in the Tombs. Lock him up.
I've seen now that they're saying that was somebody saying in the chat. Where did you see that? Yeah, somebody said in the chat that ICE vehicles are being blocked by people with the meatpacking workers are lying on the road in front of them. Well, run over them.
Yeah,
run over them. I mean, they're blocking a public street. You have no obligation. You've look. Brian Wilson was a Vietnam War veteran, 1987. He was so convinced that what he was doing right, trying to block a U.S. Navy munitions train. He sat on the tracks, and he's an amputee, double amputee, lost both of his legs because he took it that seriously.
Right.
So
And you said Brian Wilson. So speaking of Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, he passed away today. Which whenever you said Brian Wilson, I was like, wait a minute, where's he caveating this one to?
Well, his first initial was S. His middle name was Brian. He went by Brian Wilson. So yeah, but yeah, he lost both his legs. He took the protest so seriously. These people want to take it so seriously, then they face the consequences of being run over by automobiles. I mean, did you see the thing that lies, the video where the guy got in front of the ICE vehicle and was running backwards for several hundred feet and then fell over? The vehicle stopped, never ran over him. They lied in the media, falsely claimed that they ran over the guy, didn't run over him, and then they said he was brain dead. Now, I beg to differ. The fact that he did that proved he was brain dead before he ever hit the ground. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
He was brain dead long before he hit the ground. He's not dead. He got up and walked away. We saw it on the video. Stupid lies. Anyway,
right.
So, but he's the architect of his own demise. I have no empathy for somebody like that. Had he died out there, that would be his. Had he fallen and the vehicle run over him, that's the consequence of his stupidity. And
absolutely,
stupid people should wear signs. That way, you wouldn't ask them questions,
or
invite them to protest.
Right. Here's a protest. There's John working on something over there. He's somebody calling it.
John's camera went off.
No, John's camera froze. I cannot. George was in here today. I was just talking to him before the show. In fact, I was talking to him so much I almost forgot to set it up. But I didn't ask him about the camera situation here, so I can't seem to work everything off OBS like I usually do. And the camera it's given me the same thing as last week is just one behind me, which I never use. And for some reason it froze up, and I've been playing with it, trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Technical dilemmas, people. I'm telling you, man, we need autonomous trucks out here on the roads because dumb technical stuff happens. I can imagine if they're platooning with 10 trucks at 80,000 pounds apiece, 800,000 pounds going down the interstate. I can only imagine what could go wrong, Chris.
Yeah. No, nothing can go wrong. Just another day. Did we lose Todd now? Good Lord. What's going on?
He's coming. He's coming back.
People are dropping off left and right
what's
here.
What's going on here? I don't know.
You guys need to quit, buying internet in a box. Get a proper
ISP. Mine's working good.
Todd's probably lives in the valley, right?
Yeah,
in the valley. Which valley? San Fernando Valley?
Hey, man.
I hope not.
Valley girls, man. Anyway,
Right?
But seriously. Yikes. Crazy world, guys. Crazy world out there. So anyway.
Now, what are your thoughts, or what do you think? So the orders the Marines actually received from 29 Palms before heading up to LA. What are some of the things that maybe they would have some information, intelligence, or something that they would have received before heading up?
Well, I hope they would have got some intelligence. I don't know if what they got in advance, but because it's not a subject that the intelligence officer of the battalions are focused on because it's domestic information.
Right.
So
right.
wherever the intel officer for the battalion is sending troops up there or from post there, 29 Palms, would had to have gone over as a liaison to local law enforcement and to the National Guard to find out what's going on. And hopefully they've briefed the troops. But of course, they're going to get rules of engagement. They're going to get rules on the use of deadly force. Obviously, that should be a given about what's going on here. And they're told their mission. The mission is to protect federal property, which was not done in Seattle or in many other places. Right. These people are dangerous, and the people who support them are dangerous. This is not, as Adam actually alluded to. He actually almost flat out stated this. I mean, these people are funded. I mean, this isn't just organic. They pallet loads of bricks once again being dropped off.
Right.
And
Hundreds of people
being handed out. Yeah.
Hundreds of people don't show up to one city all of a sudden off of one Facebook post or one tweet with tactical gear ready to start shooting and killing people. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
Well, I mean, look, you can get organic crowds that come out of nowhere. I saw it in Africa all the time. People just glom up. But my point here is that,
but it was right for it. Yeah.
But organic crowds don't show up with pickup truck loads full of tactical gear, body armor, face mask, protective mask, things like that, and pallet loads of bricks conveniently dropped on side streets near where these people are throwing bricks at federal vehicles, and that is attempted murder. I mean, when you throw a brick at a vehicle, that's attempted murder, and we have the person on foot. Why is that person not in jail? Why are the Los Angeles Police Department not going out and hunting this person down and locking him up in jail? They're dangerous, and someone's going to get killed. And not only did they throw those bricks at ICE, they threw them at privately owned vehicles, people just driving down the street. When this person gets away with this, then what's next? They're going to rape their neighbor because, hey, nothing's going to happen. They're going to murder somebody.
That's what was happening in 2020. The Chaz zone. They were trying to self-police, and I saw this video. I swear to God, it's true. This guy comes running up in this video and says, "Hey, you guys, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep up with this anymore. We got our own people raping people. We got our own people robbing people. We got our own people doing all these things to each other."
There's also murder in Chaz. There was murder there.
He says, "I can't police all this stuff." Hello, genius. This is why we hired uniformed officers.
Right.
This is why
the
we
ones
have
you
the
wanted to
rule of
keep
law.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only do they do that, they also segregated that society. Remember, the Chaz was racially segregated. Only black people can go here.
Right.
Did they not get the irony of that?
And what was funny, they had like a pan of dirt trying to grow crops, and only black people could partake in it or something. It's so stupid. I mean, you're not going to grow crops on a pan in the middle of Seattle on a street. Come on, it's not going to work that way. You may grow a little bit of grass or some weeds, maybe. That's about it.
A little bit of grass, yeah. It probably grew grass,
Hey,
all right.
You can grow some herbs in some pots.
It probably grew grass. That's for darn sure. Right. Man, I swear. Look, we cannot tolerate this. Pam Bondi, indictments, arrest warrants. Let's get busy. Get the marshals out there. Get the FBI out there. Let's start rounding these people up. There's lots of jail cells they can sit in.
I think why can I not think of his name here now? FBI director. His name's escaping me, but Patel. Thank you. He made a statement. He says, "Man, we're overworked. Right now, we're overworked. We got so much going on, all these investigations, things going on."
I will tell you what, as a federal law enforcement official, I'm happy to be deputized and flown to Los Angeles right now. I've got a nightstick and I can carry a firearm and I'm ready.
But it's not just the arrest, but it's the investigative work you got to do. All the other stuff.
I am a federal investigator. That's what I did. A counterintelligence agent. Let me loose. You just got to pay and fly me to LA. That's it.
Right, you got to pay.
This is right there to do the booking.
Paid anti-protester over here. We got
Todd here to do the fingerprinting. We got Chris here to do the booking. I'll transport him to jail for you.
I'll do the interrogation as well. And see, this is what we call surge capacity. Yes. You know who the qualified investigators are. You know who the qualified agents are, and you pick up the phone and you call them and you bring them in. You activate them. You deputize them. Right. Give me a badge. Swear me in, and I'm ready. I'm ready, coach. Put me in.
or what they could do is give you a cell to work with, if you will. So you'd have people to be able to work and transport you here and there and move around the whole city. That's what would need to happen.
No, I'm happy to go to Los Angeles. I used to live in LA. Happy to go out there. I'll go tonight. We'll do the red eye, fly out there tonight. If I have to drive to JFK to get in a JetBlue flight to fly to California, I'll do it. I prefer to go from Harrisburg, President Trump or Kash Patel, but pick me up, get my badge, and I'll be out there in a heartbeat.
Send a blue and white Gulfstream with the United States of America on the side from Andrews. Pick you right up.
Yeah, that'll work too. But I'm happy to fly commercial.
Right.
But I'll fly the red eye. Get me out there, man. No, put me in, coach. That's enough of this nonsense. These people are dangerous. They're undermining the safety of the republic and people. I mean, who do they think these police and soldiers and National Guardsmen are, especially the National Guardsmen? These National Guardsmen are probably, some of them actually work at this meatpacking plant a few days ago.
Sure.
And have been activated now. and they're standing on line and people throwing rocks at them, throwing bricks at them, endangering public safety. It's no. This country's dealt with enough of this anarchy. It's time to punish these evildoers.
It's definitely not protest. I mean, like was said earlier, if you were just protesting, you'd be standing on the street holding signs, doing your little chants and stuff, not by keeping people or impeding people's right to travel, things like that. That's what protesting is. When you start breaking laws and throwing rocks at people, looting, there's a lot of looting going on in LA that they're not necessarily talking about. All these things are not protesting anymore. These are crimes.
Yeah, when you also have the people who take advantage of protests that come in and do the looting or do other things that maybe weren't even part of the protest to start with. So now they have carte blanche to commit crime at the same time. So now you also have other crimes that are happening. You probably have domestic violence, you probably have rapes, murders that are going on that the police can't respond to because they have to focus not on this nonsense.
Did they get rid of that law in California? If it's under $1,000, you don't prosecute?
No, it's still a law.
Yeah. And you saw Gavin Newsom's wife was in a nice Beverly Hills swanky area shopping today.
No, I didn't see that.
Had her full California Highway Patrol detail with her. Everything.
I was gonna say she had a detail.
Oh,
let them eat cake.
Right. I'm going into Prada.
Marie Antoinette in the 21st
Actually,
century.
I'm wearing Prada shoes. I say that.
Yeah, but was Marie Antoinette? Was that a misunderstanding on that quote?
Yes, it was, but it's attributed to her, so she's stuck with it. But, she really can't reply because she was beheaded.
Yeah, her windpipe was cut off. She's done.
But
sad part for her, she was actually Austrian, not even French.
Right. So GOP lawmakers are looking to flip the script on Gavin Newsom and Bass by defining anti-ICE rights with one word. And here's quote: when people are directly assaulting property and law enforcement, that's the very definition of insurrection, of course, according to Representative Issa. He tells Fox News. Absolutely insurrection. And they are fomenting insurrection. They should be in cuffs and they should be in a federal facility right now.
Yeah, orange is the new black.
Governor and mayor with his nice coiffed hair.
Certainly Karen Bass, but Newsom, I don't know if he's gone far enough to go beyond the pale to commit a felony violation, but she's committed felonies and she should be indicted for it. No, this is ridiculous. These people
Gavin's so well protected with, like we talked about in the first hour with the nesting dolls. He's like on the inside protected with the Pelosi's and all that on the inside.
Well, not just that. I mean, the point is that he may be an idiot, but he's a slick idiot, and he goes right to the edge, and not quite going over the edge. So,
right, yeah, he knows where to push people's buttons and not quite say what he's saying. Yeah, he's an expert at that for sure.
Yeah, you got it. You got that right. So I have no empathy for these people, and I just wish them bad outcomes because they are endangering the lives of people. And for what? I mean, we're not talking about the Americans shouldn't, respond to Japan's attack in Pearl Harbor. The Americans shouldn't do this. The Americans shouldn't go to Iraq. These aren't substantive issues. You are defending the authorized, legal, legitimate, moral removal of murderers and rapists and pedophiles. How can you justify that? How can you? This nonsense. And the fact that you won't even let these people deport, and you think you have a right that they stay here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have Maxine Waters going to ICE facilities trying to say she's exercising her, quote, constitutional responsibilities, which you have no such thing. There's no such thing as constitutional responsibility, especially for a legislator. Come on.
No, she also claims she has oversight. She has no oversight at that facility.
No.
She has no right to enter that facility. I can't just go to the Capitol building as a member of the executive branch, nor could you. I had to have a pass and my intelligence community badge to enter the Congress, and the same with the Supreme Court. Those places are controlled by different authorities.
Right.
The legislative branch under the Speaker of the House controls access, and you can only come in with their permission.
Right.
By the same token, they can't just walk. She can't just walk into the Pentagon, Maxine Waters. Why does she think she can walk into a detention center? She can't. She has no legal authority. These are idiots who misstate their role in government because the rubes aren't bright enough to know. Because guess what? Nobody learns civics anymore. Gosh.
Right. Yeah. Like work serving at the White House under the vice president. I had he's president of the Senate. I had an ID to go up there, but while on duty, if he's not up there, I couldn't actually go up there. But if I was off duty going up there to attend an event, I could do that. But I couldn't wear anything military, anything like that. I mean, other than just what you could wear in civilian clothing. That's it.
Yeah, every time that almost every time, but most times I went to the Capitol building, I was in a business suit. There was an occasion or two where I went in uniform, but that was unusual. But yeah, again, you can't just wander in. I had to be approved, And so who the heck does Maxine Waters think she is? Because she was elected in a district that's overwhelmingly full of idiots that elect Democrats, that she has some special rights or privilege or obligation? No.
Of course.
She's somewhere special.
They knew they were nobody special. They knew they were getting let in there, and that
She
they
wanted
had
to be turned
exactly
out.
right.
She
They had the
wanted the
media
moments.
there. They were ready for it. They expected to be turned away, and they wanted to grandstand on it. Look at their constituents and go, look what they're doing to us. Oh, we're so picked on.
Yep, absolutely. And she was rightfully had that door slammed in her face by that officer or security officer, for sure.
Yeah, she did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you were going to say something. You're leaning into the mic there. Go ahead.
I think he's typing.
Oh, I thought he was going to say something like one of those.
No, I want to make sure I had the right. No, I want to make sure I had the right name. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver has been indicted on a 3-count indictment for forcibly impeding and interfering with federal law enforcement officials last month. She tried to enter the Delaney Hall Federal Immigration and prevent the arrest of the mayor there. And so, she's been indicted and she faces 8 years in prison. And of course, she's claiming that she's innocent. Of course, she's not innocent. And that, to me, is the first sign that this administration is taking things seriously. That they're actually going to do something about these reprobates who've been undermining public security. These members of Congress think they can act with impunity. You are subject to the same laws we are. You are not special. And if you think you are, wait till you get thrown out of office. And we can show you plenty of former congressmen like Jim Traficant who found themselves in prison.
Yep. Yeah, your oversight doesn't allow you to put your hands on federal law enforcement officials or anybody for that matter, even your own staff, for crying out loud. It's called assault, and it's a felony, and you should go to jail or prison.
Wait a minute. You mean they're not above the law?
Nope.
Well, we make the law. Constitutional responsibilities. I'm Maxine Waters. I'll slap the face out of your head.
I saw this movie. I am the law.
Judge Dredd over here.
I love that episode or that part of the movie where Rob Schneider's there and they're on the prison ship and he's like, he looks familiar and then he kind of puts his hand up over his eyes and he goes, Dredd?
Yeah.
Because he never saw his face. All he saw was below the visor. He's like, Dredd?
Well, there's a series out called, I believe it's called Dredd, right? And the guy playing it kind of looks like Sly down here. And he said he'll only do the role if he can just keep the helmet on the whole time. And they agreed to it because he looks like Sly, like right here. So
wow,
worked out.
I thought that was a pretty good movie. I was, anyway,
absolutely.
Maximilian Schell was in it. What's that?
You were talking about one of the Beach Boys died here.
Brian Wilson.
Brian Wilson. Yeah, it was Sly Stone just recently passed away too.
What? Stallone?
Sly Stone, the singer.
Oh, the singer. Okay.
Sly and the
But
Family
when he said
Stone,
Sly, because some people call him Sylvester Stone
Sly
and
and the
then you
Family
had
Stone.
Sly.
And the Family
Yeah,
Stone.
yeah.
Yeah, Family Stone. Okay. I was like, wait a second. Sylvester Stone.
I was trying to think of it earlier, and once he said Sly, it clicked.
Oh, Tina Turner died now. It's just
What?
It's just,
I missed that one.
Years ago.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
she died now. So I mean, a lot of iconic names are going. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know if you're a General Hospital fan, but now the triangle of Leslie and Monica and Rick Weber all have passed away now. The last one passed away just today.
I cannot say anything about General Hospital. I know the name and that.
He's hanging out at his grandma's house or something.
No,
I started watching General Hospital in 1978. I haven't watched it probably in 20 years, but I still kind of keep up on a little bit.
I once mistakenly watched an episode of Falcon Crest when I was maybe 12.
I love
and when the hour was over, I looked at my grandmother and go, "Oh, there's no conclusion." She goes, "Oh, there's never a conclusion. It's a soap opera." I'm like, "Well, that's
never a
dumb."
conclusion.
And I never watched another. I'm like, "I'm not watching this crap."
You wanted to wrap up and be done.
Yeah, I was waiting for it to be done. I'm not going to sit there every week and watch this nonsense.
Soap operas have storylines that have been going on for 40 or 50 years. Some of the old school.
But Falcon Crest, man, Chase Gioberti. I'll never forget the lead character from that show.
Was Falcon Crest? No, that was Santa Barbara. Was the spinoff of Dallas, right? Or was it Falcon Crest? Which one was it? One of the two.
Well,
anyway,
no. From Dallas, you had the Colbys. That was
Yeah.
a spinoff of it was with what's her name there. Anyway, yeah. No, we digressed here a little bit, but no, these people are
we
criminals.
talk about everything. Soap
these people are
operas.
criminals, yeah. Well, the
Just-
soap operas aren't criminals.
I got to tell you, Todd, I do like the addition to your flags with the MIA, the missing, the POW MIA flag in the back.
Well, I thank you for saying that, man. And I put that there because on Sunday at about noon, I'll be elected the American Legion Department of Tennessee commander. So I'll be in charge of the entire state. So, which is, we recognize the POW MIA mission, of course, and that's why I put it up there. So we're going to have DEC meetings, Department Executive Committee meetings, and I'll be on screen live and in color. And of course, I'll have that right behind me.
Oh, awesome. So, is that why you grew up the facial hair? You feel more manly now, or?
Oh, shut up. I'm going to shave tomorrow and be more boyish.
Oh, no. Oh, no. As Phil Robertson would say, a man's got to have a beard.
Man, yeah,
Who recently
he's
passed
got
away,
a mug too, don't he?
Didn't he also just pass
Yes,
away?
he did. Yeah.
You know, you talk about that. I got a haircut last week and a beard trim, and people are like, "Man, you look 20 years younger." I said, "Imagine if I took it all off. I'll get carded again."
Yeah. Yeah, you can put a little bit of gray, touch of gray or whatever it's called, and yeah, you'd be all right.
Yep. One of the viewers is saying they hope I get Kevin Sorbo on. Yeah, I had Kevin Sorbo on the channel before, and I wrote to him a few months ago, and Kevin said he's happy to come back on the channel. And then he didn't respond, and then I was gone. So I got to reach out again and see where we're at on that. But yeah, Kevin Sorbo, and it was Virtual Western Cape is saying that that he's a big fan of the Andromeda series. That's my favorite Kevin Sorbo. I wasn't a huge fan of Hercules.
No.
But Andromeda, Captain Dylan Hunt. Yes. The Andromeda Ascendant. That was a great show. I love that. That's another one of those that was, and it was envisioned by Gene Roddenberry, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So apparently, I guess Gavin Newsom had a little. Gavin Newsom was mocked for tech issues during an anti-Trump address to Californians. It was apparently an absolute fail, and it's quote: "If they can't do this correct, what makes anyone believe they can run California at all?" One influencer said. I love it. Can't even deliver a simple message over Facebook or social media without having issues. I love it.
No, they've so ruined California. It's such a shame. It was California was the place that everybody wanted to go.
The Golden
for
State,
decades.
yeah.
The Golden State, the Bear Republic. You know, it's really messed. But by the way, guys, did you see that we have drawn down military and diplomatic families from our mission in Baghdad? Something's going on in Iraq.
I've not seen that. Was that being reported, or are you seeing?
Oh no, it's been reported a couple hours ago, and they're updating it now. I suspect this might have something to do with Iran. We may be on the verge of something bad with Iran. Just saying.
Interesting. Yeah, and have you ever? I'm sure you've been over to Iraq and into the Green Zone and all the places around there. I imagine you've been to all the embassies there.
No, actually, no. I've never been to Baghdad. I've been to Iraq, but never been to Baghdad. No.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure you've been to Saudi Arabia. I'm imagining.
Oh gosh, yes, I've been to Saudi Arabia
Many times. Yeah, the whole the diplomatic compound out there.
It is not my cup of tea. Although Saudi Arabia has changed dramatically since I was last there. I mean, women drive now, shockingly. You know, so I mean, that's a different world. It's a different world. You know, I mean, not shockingly because I think women shouldn't drive. It's shocking that they allow women to drive because. Yeah. It's such an evil place, but I mean, no, it's changed so much. I mean, women can drive, and many things have happened. But that said, it's not exactly a liberal, Western liberal bastion.
Right? No.
Do women have to wear burqas and stuff like that over there, or are they more liberated?
They did when I was last there. I mean,
yeah, they did when I was there. Yeah,
not burqas though. The abaya is what they wear. The burqa is an Afghan thing. So, yeah.
Right.
I thought it was all the same. I thought it was with the Arabs. It was all the same. I didn't know.
No, there's a difference, guys. By the way, have you watched the drama of the selfie yacht that sailed to Israel with Greta Thunberg?
Oh, that was funny.
Tell everybody about this. This was a complete disaster. I love it. She's such a fool.
Yeah, it's Greta Thunberg, the climate activist from Sweden, who looks like she's got some sort of medical condition. So I guess we shouldn't make fun of her. But Greta Thunberg went with a bunch of other activists on what we're calling the selfie yacht. And this, of course, these people are self-involved and full of themselves. And they were going to bring relief and famine supplies to those people in Gaza. so they had like a multi-million-dollar yacht, a luxury, sailing towards there, and the Israeli Navy came out, intercepted them, arrested and detained them. And when they came on the boat, they handed them sandwiches and soft drinks. And then the French doctor was part of this gang of misfits, actually has the audacity, once they were repatriated back through France, to claim that they were abused by the Israeli forces.
Come on.
Because they mocked them and deprived them of sleep.
They made fun of you because you deserve to be made fun of. Guess what? You weren't brought up on any charges. You weren't put in any jail. They didn't put handcuffs on you. They made fun of you. That's your punishment. Get out of here.
I mean,
well, you think they'd be used to it by now? Everybody makes fun of them on Facebook,
but they don't read those comments.
Deprived of sleep. They weren't even in Israeli government's care for 24 hours.
No.
What a bunch of wusses! You can't stay up for 12 hours.
Several hours, enough to process them get them out of the way.
Oh, my goodness, they were given sandwiches.
Is that what she suffers from?
No. That's a bad word.
Oh, is it?
That's a bad word.
Oh, I will not say that word again. I had no idea. What is that? One of them,
You didn't
RSA
pronounce
words?
you didn't pronounce it correctly. It's an Afrikaans. They took an Afrikaans word and turned it into something with Latin. So
I got my imagination's going wild now. I got an idea right there.
it has to do with a body part of women. We'll leave it at that.
I
Oh,
figured as
no.
much.
Okay. All right.
That's exactly where my mind went.
Well, you went to the right place.
Yeah. Well,
gotta be careful what you read from the chat there, John.
I
trying to
well,
pronounce words on air.
I'm
Don't do
still
it.
questioning if I curse
You're
in
getting a
German.
bunch of laugh emojis over here, by the way. They're laughing at you.
If I curse in German, does that mean I'm cursing on against FCC regulations?
Tja, keine Ahnung. Vielleicht soll es auf manche Wörter auf Deutsch reden hier auf unserem Programm. Ja, grüß Gott, alle fröhliche Abend für euch.
You misunderstand me, Chris. I only learned German curse words. I didn't learn the rest of them.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But I
can say things like, du hast eine Affe Gesicht or Gesicht.
Ich möchte ein Bier, bitte.
Yeah, I see. I didn't say it right either.
Guys, you're hurting my ears.
Never said I could say it right or with a German accent or as elegant as Chris does. He almost makes it sound sexy.
I don't know. I think a lot of people prefer it when I speak. Quand c'est le français parler, c'est plusieurs des gens qui pensent que ça c'est très joli quand je parle français.
There you go. You probably told us to where to get off, and we're like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds really good right there.
Yeah, I said basically, some people think that when I speak French, it's very delicious and lovely.
See, you can say anything. We believe it. Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Folks,
no, but there's a hazard saying that up there in New Hampshire. There are some Canadians who are close by, can pick up the radio waves who do speak French. Yeah. They'll probably call and complain. The Canadian, by the way, Canadian tourism is down to the United States. What a bunch of sad sacks and whiny crybabies, because these are the same people that took our Jim Beam off the shelves up there because their feelings were hurt because we're tired of them freeloading for national defense.
They've already
we just hit them up with tariffs. They got to pay for these tariffs.
They take it off the shelf
now.
You take it off the shelf, but you've already paid for it. Why would you do that?
You
already own it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so they could drink it. They wanted a better, superior liquor to drink.
It's attention. What, Molson and Labatt's?
No. They took the Jim Beam and the Jack Daniels off the shelf because they wanted to save it for themselves for a better and more superior alcohol to have to drink.
Such as?
More superior than Canadian drinks. That's what he's saying.
Canadian whiskey is. I mean, what is it?
There's Canadian whiskey? What brands? I've never heard of Canadian whiskey.
I don't know. Is it
big plastic bottle that has Canadian written on it? I don't know.
It says on the bottle. It says
Class 6 for crying out loud on a Friday, right?
It's on the bottle. It says whiskey, eh?
Yeah, of the plastic bottle of Canadian whiskey. Big bottle at the AFES Class 6, right? Every Friday, right? People would do that back in the day.
Okay, John, are you the same guy that buys his wine in a box?
No, I don't drink wine. I am a beer connoisseur.
Do you get your beer? Do you get your beer in aluminum cans?
No, I buy bottles. Honestly,
okay.
Well, it depends. Sometimes I do buy them in aluminum cans. I can be
an aristocrat over here.
And I can also finish them and chuck them into the bed of my pickup truck while I'm driving down the road too.
Oh my! Here we go.
Yeah, this is why I don't drive on the roads of New Hampshire.
I'm going right? Back to the 1980s.
I've actually drive up here. Come on.
I'm guessing that there's a loaded 12 gauge in the back window too of your pick 'em up truck too.
I do not own a 12 gauge, and you think I rightfully would?
It's 10 gauge, right? What
I don't know any rifles. I should have an AR-15. I really should.
You should. They're cheap as heck, and they're pretty doggone cool.
They are cool. I fired a few of them. They're awesome to fire. I'll tell you what, man.
Yeah. And the movies do them an injustice, of course. Like, oh, it's kicks so hard. It's doing all this. It's like,
oh, jeez.
I love that. You see that 12-year-old? That guy was whining and crying about how his shoulder hurt and stuff like that.
Right. And
she goes through all the different rounds as he's building up to him and shooting him off. And she's smiling and grinning like, don't hurt.
I don't know about that. I saw some serious violence last night. I watched The Accountant 2 with Ben Affleck, and then afterwards went back and rewatched Accountant number 1. I forgot just how
pretty
much
good, right?
Yeah, no, it's not quite a John Wick body count, but still, especially the second one, man. I mean, it's like a war zone in the second one.
And the banter, I believe in the second one. I've only seen previews, but it's pretty good apparently.
It is. The Accountant 2 is pretty good. It's on Amazon Prime right now. That's how I watched it. But I've been meaning to watch it for a number of days. And last night I finally around 10 o'clock watched it, and I was glued to the whole movie. I'd forgotten because that one came out in 2016. It's been so long since I've seen it. I saw it on a flight one time. And of course, a little screen about 3 inches wide.
Yeah.
So, but so I went and watched the first one again. It stood the test of time. Yeah.
I don't have to watch movies for violence anymore. I just turn on YouTube and watch peaceful protest.
I just watch LA.
Yeah. Right.
It's a real deal, man. This stuff's happening.
So I got a question about the riots in LA. At what point do you think it's going to wind down? At some point, they're just going to go home. They're going to be like, okay, we're not getting paid anymore. It's time to go home.
They're not going to go home as long as they're rounding up criminals. That's what they're trying to stop. And so,
no, I'm talking about the protesters themselves. At what point are they just?
We got a major national protest coming up this weekend. So it's either going to carry over into that, or this one winds down for that.
These people, these shameful scumbags, are going to undermine the Army's birthday on June 14th. You watch.
Yep, and
you watch.
Can't have that. Of course they will. Flag Day and everything. And they're going to be out there with the Mexican flags. They're going to be out there burning the American flag. You watch that. They will. They'll be out there burning and trampling it.
So, last year we were asking the question here on this show, how long during the Trump administration does it take before the left starts acting out again in violence?
Right. Well, we said by warm weather, we said.
Yeah. It's been building up here the last couple of months, I think. And you're right. Yeah.
By warm weather, we said it's going to ramp up, and by mid-fall, it'll die out probably.
And the way you stop this is deterrence. You arrest them, you indict them, you prosecute them, you imprison them.
Yep. Execution. Bogus.
I am the law. Illegal use of a computer, 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
And you think about it, man, the dystopian future that some books or some movies, TV shows, whatever, throw out there. And some of the things we're seeing come to fruition in some cases, or being espoused by the left. I mean, it's very scary because it's almost a reality. A lot of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Skynet's real, folks. I mean, look at the AI stuff out there. I mean, every time I see a video in which someone is purported to say something, I am super cautious about running with that story until I verify it in multiple ways. It's very, very disturbing because it's so easy to alter these things. The AI it's getting better by the day. It's amazing. And when you watch it render, you give it a couple parameters and it renders an image of something for you almost instantaneously. It's pretty frightening.
Right.
Imagine what's done with video.
I mean, if you watch any YouTube videos, I mean, I listen to a lot of music, and sometimes I flip back between YouTube and Amazon because YouTube has a lot of the live stuff that I want to listen to. And you'll see some of the commercials or hear some of the commercials, and it'll be like a celebrity, but it'd be like an AI voice over, but it sound like them, but it's not really them.
I haven't seen these.
Yeah, and then you got a lot of people that do these commercials that basically are them holding their iPhone, doing advocating for this or that, and some of the stuff that they advocate for is just nonsensical stuff that it's obviously a scam, and I don't know how it gets through the YouTube quote unquote censors. How does some of these things get through, and you get taken off the air?
Yeah, because they're not centrist, objective news commentators who report the news. That's why they don't get taken off. Yeah, no, it's look. I mean, some of these things, like for instance, Suno is a AI music generating site, and I've used it to compose multiple songs, and some of them are pretty darn good. I mean, it's amazing with that. But the video is the harder thing because you have to have all the natural intonations, reflections, movement of the eyes, the pupils, the skin, the texture.
I am pretty,
but they're rendering that much and much better every day. It's getting much better. It's pretty frightening. So, and what gets me is that people are fooled by the simple things. Like I keep seeing people freaking out over Trump Truth Social posts that are reposted on Twitter, except they're not real. All you have to do is go to Trump's webpage and see on Truth Social and see they didn't do it. I mean, they're not even good fakes, and people fall for it. People fall for anything, man.
That's because they're emotional.
Now
emotional thinkers.
I get how people fall for Ponzi schemes and swindles and buy swampland, in Arizona. Now I understand how it happens. Not just gullibility, but people invest emotionally. And when you make emotional decisions, you act against your best interest most of the time.
Right. Well, I've been watching a number of videos on YouTube, sometimes just for background, you're doing chores or whatever throughout the house. And I get into some of the Machiavellian stuff and they talk about modern politics, if you will. people don't want to get into policy with you or facts or anything like that. It's too hard to keep up. They want emotional stuff. They want, oh, thank you. I'm great. I'm an American, red, white, and blue. We're going to be great. I'll vote for you. You know, everything's going to work out if I vote for you, plus ice cream on Sunday. You know what I'm saying? This is what they want. They don't want to get into the hard facts and reality of how much $32 trillion is. That's you can't fathom that. So that's how much debt you have piled on top of you. And people can't fathom that. They, whatever. They don't care.
That is kind of unfathomable when you think about that kind. It's way more than 32 now. But when you think about that, I mean, come on, man. You got people out here working 50 grand a year.
But we'll vote for
$32 trillion.
But we'll vote for people who will tell them, you know, that the Democrats are the problem with spending, but will spend just almost as much as the Democrats, but they spent just a little bit less, so therefore they're okay. You know what I'm saying? It's weird.
So here's a question. The big beautiful bill, from my understanding, I heard passed today. So it's going to go to Trump's desk for signature. That's I got that just when I was coming in the studio. But on that big beautiful bill is that $1,000 investment for every child born after December 2024. The government's going to put $1,000 for every child, and of course that's an investment, so it'll accrue interest through the years. And so the kid, when they become an adult, will have a substantial amount of money, supposedly, to go to college or start a business or do what it is they want to do. I'm kind of curious if you guys heard about this, because look on Chris's face, I'm thinking he hasn't heard about this yet.
I heard the proposal, but I didn't know that all that was in the bill. Of course, it's went back and forth several times. Go ahead.
From my understanding, it was in the bill. I was listening to Trump explain it, and he had all the architects in the room with them, and including Mike Johnson, when they were explaining this. Do you guys feel like this is really the politically right, engaging in a different form of socialism?
I don't know. It's the problem with legislation is, you know, this is 1,100 pages. I mean, what the heck to put 1,100 pages here? It's ridiculous. I can make this bill in 3 pages or less. You know, I feel like name that tune. Okay, name that tune.
Right.
No, I mean, first off, in page 1, the existing tax cuts from the 2017 bill are renewed. Next paragraph. Further cut this tax, that tax, that tax, and then also cut taxes on overtime, remove taxes on overtime, and also on tips. And then here's the budget. Done.
Right.
3 pages, not 1,100 pages. Utter nonsense. I'm sick of this nonsense. You want a big, beautiful bill? Put a big, beautiful bill on 1 page.
Right. Well, that's it. I had a colonel one time, and he had all the subordinate officers submit 1-page memos. He said, get to the point in 1 page, and we'll move forward from there. If you can't summarize it in 1 page, it's probably not good enough to go forward. So and he had these guys writing 1-pagers. You
do realize how many pages it is just for the definitions alone?
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, then you publish a separate glossary, and you can open up that. But this, you know, you're not going to need. So, look, I mean, you know, I wrote for the President of the United States, and typically that's a 1-2-page maximum intelligence report with graphics. If you need to put a map on there, that's how you get on the second page, maybe. You don't write. I mean, the president gets briefed on so many intelligence issues every morning, unless it's something specifically the president asked for and asks you specific questions to answer. You are down to a page. And if you cannot get what you need to say in a page, you're not getting it before the president of the United States. That was my experience. So you have to learn what brevity is. And a lot of people don't know that. They're verbose. Speaking of verbose, Frederick Forsyth passed away this week, the British crime, former journalist and British crime author, the guy that wrote The Day of the Jackal, among other things.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He's 86 when he passed away.
They made that into a movie, right?
The Day of the Jackal.
That character was
a couple. They made it in the 70s. They made The Day of the Jackal, and then they made this the Jackal later on with Bruce Willis, which wasn't quite true to the story, but it was okay.
Yeah, it's good movies. Yeah, good author. Wow, that's sad. So Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, today balked at a handful of questions posed by the media during Wednesday's press briefing regarding the anti-ICE riots that have spiraled in Los Angeles, including remarks that one prompt was stupid before quickly moving on. So she's in there shooting down questions, calling them stupid questions, and you know, I love this press secretary. She's from New Hampshire, right? 20-something. Yeah. A go-getter, a firebrand. I mean, this is what we need as press secretary. Can Trump pick press secretaries? I'm telling you. I love it.
She is sharp.
Shooting down questions like, you know, another thing, another quote here. Quick question. So is there or were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade? President Trump would allow that. So basically the question is, it's a weird question here because the guy stuttered. Basically, he asked the question of would President Trump allow for peaceful protests? And basically she said, yes, peaceful protests are allowed. That's legal.
Yeah, there's no
Under the
protest.
Trump administration in 2017, we as truck drivers went into DC against the electronic logging device. We were met by Metropolitan Police who worked with us.
Yes.
And we worked with them. They guided us through processes so we weren't impeding upon traffic and doing certain things, and we worked diligently with them. We were never impeded upon. We were never mistreated. We were treated very, very well. The People's Convoy during the Biden administration, they put out dump trucks to keep them from getting into DC by blocking off exit ramps. And in fact, one person got killed because they rear-ended one of those dump trucks.
Right.
I can attest to that because I rode for 9 hours around DC with Mike in his semi, the same semi that delivered my mother's remains to her gravesite when we had her funeral procession. I jumped in with Mike, spent 9 hours driving around DC, and they intentionally put dump trucks and police to block us from getting into the mall, which caused a huge public safety issue. As you said, someone was killed. Now, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Right. And who pays for that? You know, like, does his insurance pay for that? Or, I mean, or they refuse to pay because he was protesting? You know,
well,
I mean, who pays for that?
the protesters themselves can't be held responsible, I don't think. They were just driving down the interstate. They just trying to block them off from getting in there. So they had no direct obligations to it. But the city itself, or whoever is responsible with the dump trucks,
right,
well, obviously said, well, we had a right to block off the, to control traffic. So they won't be held accountable. So some unfortunate person passes away due to negligence on the Metro's part.
Right.
And probably at the behest of the president. And so they just get to suffer the consequences of somebody else's dumb actions, where they should have had a right to exit that interstate without being impeded upon by the DMV or whoever's dump truck it was that was ordered to be there.
Right. And if you thought that a truck wasn't supposed to be there, a better way to do that, which I don't agree with, would be to simply pull them over. A traffic stop.
They didn't have a legal right to, though.
Too.
See, that's the problem. You have to have a legal reason to pull somebody over.
Exactly. So, but I'm saying it would be safer than doing what they did, though. So I don't agree with it.
I'm curious a little further, as a side note, what the truckers did is they pulled off into, like, say on Route 50, they pulled off into a marketplace with a big parking lot, and they kind of gathered together there. Then a few of them took off and went away from DC. And when the cops pursued them to make sure they were leaving, the rest turned and went into DC. So they evaded the cops.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But the problem is once they got in there, they sicked the DOT on them, and they give them.
Of course.
They inspected them trucks like you would to leave. They were having them towed out of there, so they suffered the consequences for having made it.
Right.
Yep. No, I participated in that event. I covered that day after day, and it was fascinating. But it wasn't that many people interested in it. It wasn't like the Canadian trucker rally, which people like Viva Fry made themselves a career on social media off of that truckers rally, and he's still around now.
Well, the People's Convoy got a great deal of support across the country, moral support and financial support. But there's people that gathered in overpasses, holding up signs for them. There's people that were running along with them.
That's all true. But what I'm saying is that when it got to Hagerstown, the media didn't cover the story.
Media, it was like media blackout. I think the daily, I like to call it the daily bestiality.
Daily Beast. Yeah.
I don't think that's the name of it.
No, it's a Daily Beast. But they were covering it. Of course, they were covering it in a negative light and stuff like that.
Of course.
But yeah, no, it was like complete and total Mockingbird Media. Is that what you alluded to earlier, Todd? And that's basically what it was. They had control of the media, and it was blackout.
Right. Absolutely.
No, that's what it was. I was there. We were covering alternative media, but I wasn't getting many views. It was pretty crazy. And I spent a lot of time covering it. Some really good footage where this girl from Canada, who's like a Ukrainian immigrant, could barely speak English, sat in her car and ate, Wendy's breakfast meals in her car, and you could see the rubbish all over her car, and was getting tens of thousands of views. And I tried watching. I'm like, what? That's anyway. No, it was interesting, the People's Rally, but they definitely weren't happy about that. They did get in and saw Ted Cruz while they were there. I missed that, unfortunately.
I had a nice meeting with them. It was a really good meeting.
Yeah. Anyway,
good deal.
Yeah, I'd hoped that it would have much more fanfare, but the media did a blackout, so basically the country didn't know about it, and it worked.
Right. So ABBA, the American Bar Association, asked the Department of Justice on Tuesday to reconsider its historic decision to shut the organization out of the judicial nomination process and insisted it rates potential judges fairly. What are your thoughts on the ABA? I think that they're far on the left. I don't think far left, but they're lefty sort of. I don't know that they're quite fair. I don't know if they're down the middle.
I don't know why they get to have any say in appointing justices. That doesn't make any sense.
Right,
No.
but their rating used to be taken into account, obviously back in the day. But they're not quite the same as they were way back when. Of course, all the news I read off tonight, folks, is from Fox News. Just so everybody knows, I didn't iterate that earlier. I just want to make sure everybody knows that I did pick that from Fox News.
So you're a Fox News kind of guy, huh?
I just happen to have it up over here, just in case we need a little something to chit chat about.
You said ABBA, and I thought Chris was going to perk up right there and start singing.
That's why I intentionally did
it was ready for Dancing Queen, man. That's what I thought we were talking about.
ABBA.
I thought that's what we were talking about. Not the American Bar Association, but
I find it concerning, Todd, that things like the American Bar Association, because you're holding a license over somebody's head. It's kind of like an interaction I had with an attorney because I was having a problem with the city in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, when I lived there, and I actually hired an attorney over the issue. And I told her, I said, I just really want to sue him. Is what I want to do. And I wanted her to come down hard on him about the issue. And she says, John, I work with these people every day. I can't do that. And lesson learned was go outside of the district and find an attorney outside of the district that doesn't work with them every day. I didn't realize that at the time, but there's issues when you're hiring an attorney. There's issues when you have a problem because they can't properly represent you regarding these matters. But when they're holding a license over their head, does that mean they can control or dictate their actions?
Yeah, seemingly. I mean, even if it's not, directly, there's the perception that they could do something.
They do it to truck drivers all the time, right? They hold
Sure.
a license over our head, and you got truck drivers using an ELD now that otherwise wouldn't be using them.
Sure, absolutely. But they say it's a privilege, so they can coerce you if it's a privilege, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't.
It was
I don't buy that.
driving was originally ruled a right because it's a form of travel, and everybody has a right to use a modern day conveyance to do so. And then some judge come along and go, oh, but it's a safety issue. I don't remember our forefathers ever fighting a Revolutionary War for safety. Freedoms, yes. Safety, I don't recall safety being anywhere in their declarations.
Right. Absolutely. Liberty or death, right?
Yeah. Live free or die, New Hampshire.
Right.
That was John Stark, who was part of the revolution. Give me liberty or give me death.
Right.
Well, let's see this time next week whether this nonsense is continuing or whether it's been quelled and thousands of people arrested like they should be and indicted. We'll see next week. Plus, we'll get to talk about the Army's birthday, June 14th, 250 years, Todd.
That's right. Same age as the nation this year, which is great. I love it.
No, the nation's next year.
1776.
Next year, yeah. 26. Sorry, yeah. 26.
But April 19th.
Yeah,
this year was the
same age as the
250th
nation.
anniversary of the beginning of the Revolutionary War.
That's correct. Yes, with the Lexington and Concord. Yep.
Concord, yeah.
All right. Well, we're
heard around the world.
Indeed.
Absolutely. How much time we got there, John? About a minute or two?
Just a couple minutes. Yeah, we're down to about a minute or so.
All right. You want to tease out the guest for next week?
If I could remember her name off the top of my head, that'd be wonderful. You know how I am.
I knew
with
I'd
names.
put you on the spot.
But I will tell you, she does have a degree in psychology, and she is going to come on and talk with us in the first hour next week about one of Chris's favorite topics, Trump derangement syndrome.
So there you go. Well, that's a tease. We don't have to give her a name. People don't need to go look her up just yet. Just tune in.
Yeah, right. We want to hold it to ourselves a little bit so that you'll be here. Come on, people.
7 to 9 Eastern, right here on WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. That's every Wednesday night, 7 to 9 Eastern. We help bring you back to reality. I don't know if we do it or not, but we're trying.
Yeah, well, I don't know about whose reality. My reality. Maybe.
Yeah, my reality. There's just reality. There's no my truth or your truth. There's just the truth. Let's get to that.
We all agree there's gravity, right? We may argue about causes it, but
sure.
We all agree that sirens happening behind me.
And they are coming for you, I think. So watch out.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Busted, pal. All right. I think we're about to be played off by the music, and there we go. Folks, take care. We'll see you next weekend. Until then, God bless.